Okay, I hope everybody can hear me. I have a little bit of a soft voice sometimes. So, next month is the anniversary. Well, my name's Aaron Young. I have about 25 years in the GIS realm, starting in transportation networks, and now I manage a team of GIS personnel. And one of the projects that we've done out of many projects over the years is a project where we collected street-level imagery and pushed it up into primarily Mapillary so that the OpenStreetMap community can utilize that for OSM editing over the years. Now, if you think about 10 years ago, one of the pushes of OSM was to fill in the map. There was a lot of gaps in the map. Aerial imagery wasn't as precise or clear as it is today, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a lot of concern about where you could source data. So if you visually looked at something, if you observed something on the street, then you could verify that that element was correct, and you could put that into OSM. So by us going out and collecting imagery, we were able to contribute to OSM. And so about 10 years ago, we started doing this. We were focused on developing countries. That's where primarily a lot of my work has been done. And so we started off in the Caribbean as a region of the world. And so we went to the ABC Islands. And I'm going to do this talk a little bit as an overview of our process and what we've done over the years, but also a nostalgic walkthrough photograph. So beware, there's some personal photographs in this. But this is a helicopter we found on the side of the road in Aruba. We drove every street in Aruba. We captured street-level imagery for it. We put it into Mapillary. We also met with government officials while we were there. We discovered a unique addressing system that we tried to incorporate into OSM at the time. And we had some fun. I found this helicopter. I took a photo. I love this photo. Here's a couple pictures of what we see along the road. And, you know, if any of you have been editing OSM using Mapillary street-level images throughout the world, you probably see a lot of unique stuff. These are an example of some of the things we found along the way. In the top left is what's considered the world's smallest hotel, is what we discovered in Jordan. You could pay $1 and stay in a Volkswagen Beetle overnight. I don't know how they clean the bedding and stuff, but it was out there in the desert. We had tons of delicious food. Shout out the Youth Mappers t-shirt right there. We would end up in some really precarious areas because we were searching for features that were not already in OSM. And so sometimes we'd end up on dirt roads in the mountains, like in that one side picture. And then we also work with a lot of people who live in the countries that we went to. In the top right is a gentleman named Anderson. He lives in Brazil, and he helped us do imagery capture throughout Brazil at the time. Also, the bottom left is us and a gentleman named Mohammed in Oman when we were there, and he jumped in the car for the day and rode around with us, and we had a great time, and he got to see how we were capturing all this imagery for his country. Found a camel one day, said hi to it, wearing my Mapillary t-shirt. And then the seesaw, we were in Chile, and we would typically spend 8 to 12 hours a day in a car, day in and day out. It's very physically taxing work that we were doing. But we noticed that in Chile, they had all these playgrounds with these seesaws, and so we would jump out of the car, go up and down on the seesaw real quick, and then jump back in the car. So if you look about 8 years ago in Mapillary, you might see a couple guys running around on seesaws in there. So a little bit of the data. We've gone to 76 countries. Some of them we've gone to multiple times in order to collect imagery or to recollect imagery in order to detect changes that occurred. Out of that 176 million images, I think that's about 13 or 14% of the total Mapillary contributions currently. And if you look at that, the equatorial circumference of the Earth, we have driven and collected images for 8 laps around the Earth, around the equator. So it's quite a bit. 145 terabytes in our archive currently. This is a list of the miles or kilometers that we've driven per year. And one of the interesting things about it is we got really busy with our travel in 2019, 20, 21, you'll notice. And so while the world was going through a pandemic at that time, we were doing a ton of travel. We did every major city in Mexico during 2020, which was just a massive feat. 2021 was South America with Brazil, Colombia, et cetera. And so we were out there jumping on planes, trying to figure out how to navigate COVID tests and everything in order to collect this imagery. It was a massive effort, but it was a lot of fun too. So here's an image of our tracks in Soweto, which is a suburb of Johannesburg, South Africa. And I wanted to show this because it's a big zigzag snake. It looks like a Pac-Man game out there. And you question, well, you missed a lot of streets. Why did you miss a lot of streets? And what this image unfortunately doesn't show is that there were a lot of unnamed streets in this area of the world. Well, in a lot of the areas of the world. It was one of the big features that we were seeking after was road names. So we would observe the street signs on the corners of the streets and then type it in physically in the car and upload that day in and day out in the car and capture accurate street names, whether it was in English or other languages as well. We created our own customized keyboard for iOS in order to make this go faster. And so we went through the entire township of Soweto in South Africa, and then we met with the city of Johannesburg's GIS staff, and we let them know what we were doing and gave them a little tutorial about OpenStreetMap. And they mentioned, well, we don't have any data for Soweto. And we're like, oh, look at this website. We just did it yesterday, and here it is. And in a little bit of time, you'll have complete, a lot of street-level imagery for it. And they were really appreciative of that because we didn't realize at the time that the city government hadn't actually mapped one of their major townships in their city. So we were able to contribute in that way. Many times we'd find street signs, street names in really strange places. Here's a picture standing on a boardwalk in Bhutan. Yeah, we would find street names everywhere as we could. Another picture of myself, you can tell there's a street sign behind this construction boarding, but I had to climb up on a car in order to read that street sign. So that name is in OSM. So how does this work? Here's a map of Mexico City, and you can see the image on the right is about 2 days worth of drive through the city, and then about 4 days, ultimately a full week of drive. And it's only a section of it. We had multiple vehicles driving through Mexico City. It took a couple weeks to get done, but we mapped the entire city of Mexico City that way, just piece by piece. Here's another example of the city limits of Dallas, Texas. Each color represents each vehicle. It took 2 vehicles, 2 weeks in order to do this. We did this as a poverty alleviation project in Dallas, which was really interesting to work with. We mapped the city of Dallas twice, and that's all in Mapillary as well. And in this case, we did every single street in the city of Dallas. So what does our office look like in the car? It looks like this, lots of snacks, a lot of traffic. I've seen people get really angry and scrape the side of our rental cars. We've had some rental cars that have had to be towed away, unfortunately, but fortunately, we've never had any physical injuries of staff. And we try to get people out with us as well. This is Paul in the blue t-shirt from Colorado, but that's also Andy from Indonesia, and so they went out mapping for a few days together. Other times, we can't get people to go places. We wanted to go to Bolivia, but Bolivia is actually pretty difficult to get there. There's a flight that leaves at like 10 p.m. and gets in at like 2 a.m., and it's about the only flight into Bolivia, and you have to have a yellow fever vaccination to go to Bolivia. So I was already vaccinated for previous trips into the Amazon region, but my son, who's there with the iPad, he got himself vaccinated, and we were able to take a 2-week road trip through Bolivia mapping. Does a fantastic job, internet kid, grew up on phones, so knew how to, edit and navigate really well. And if you don't know La Paz, Bolivia, they've got the best public transportation system in the world. It's gondolas. It's absolutely amazing to ride through. So you get all this data every day. You get back to your hotel accommodation, you have to do something with it. You got gigs and gigs of data. And so we were pushing it all up into Mapillary, and we struggled a little bit with it. We had so much data that we struggled getting it up there in a timely fashion. So we created our own uploader to do it. This uploader pushes imagery up into our own imagery platform, but also simultaneously will push it up into Mapillary as well. Interesting thing about it is you can manipulate the location of your images before you upload the images into there. So if you have any GPS distortion or whatever, you can make that correction before it goes up into other platforms. It'll also do facial blurring and all that kind of stuff. Here's a quick screenshot, an example of San Diego, California, where we were a few months ago. We were driving every single street in that city. So we see lots of funny things. Dog with a t-shirt or polo shirts, dog chasing cows down the street. And we've got archives and folders in our office of just graffiti and all sorts of interesting stuff. Somebody put a box truck in a dumpster instead of just getting it towed away. Seems more efficient, I guess. And if you look at the souk in Marrakesh, you might find Waldo in that picture. So we had a lot of fun there too. At times, we would run into situations that were a little precarious. Walking to dinner one night in Athens, Greece, we stumbled into an anti-American protest in front of the US Embassy. That's me. I didn't tell them I was American, but took a photo. In Bahrain, in the Middle East, it was a little bit of a game where we would dodge armored personnel carriers as we went around and collected this imagery. These armored personnel carriers would drive around and we'd quickly make a left if we saw one. About a third of the city was under martial law, and the military wouldn't let us into that section of the city, but the rest was okay. Kiev, Ukraine, before the war, we ran into some political protests. So that's that picture on the bottom right, and protests in South Africa as well. But it's also a lot of fun, like I said. I've never been to France, mainland France, but I have been to the Eiffel Tower, and this is in the suburbs of Tegucigalpa, Honduras. We came across the Eiffel Tower, and we went up into it. The security guard let us go up in there and hang out in the Eiffel Tower. So never been to France, but I've been to all the other territories. Most days, you see some really beautiful scenery. And if you look through Mapillary, if you look through all the imagery that's out there, you can see it for yourself. This is a suburb of Bogota, Colombia. And as you're going around and you're live editing OSM, you're collecting this imagery with all these cameras, it can become mundane. And then you see something like this, a really beautiful, neighborhood from a distance with the mountains in the background. And it's really special. And then there's other times at the end of the day when you're tired, you go out and you get a bite to eat. And so this is a picture of us in the fall of 2021 in Bogota, Colombia. And we met up with Juan and Angie, who are sitting right there, and had a nice meal one evening in Bogota. And it was really special, really enjoyable. And that's it. We've collected a ton of imagery. We've pushed it all up to the OpenStreetMap community to use, and so enjoy. Thank you.
Awesome. Do we have any questions for Aaron? Yes. Do you want to come up, or I'll come to you with a mic? Okay.
I guess I have a pretty simple question. How do you do routing? Like, you show up to a city, how do you decide the most efficient way to get every street?
Yeah, good question. And we've been asked it a lot over the years, and we've thought about it a lot. We cannot do automated routing. So the question always becomes, can you just automate your routes through the city efficiently using some algorithms, right? Unfortunately, traffic plays into that. So if you're stuck in traffic and you're going to be stuck there for an hour, you'd rather not be stuck there for an hour. So you're going to find a side road and try to get through that area, through the neighborhood that way. Sometimes there's barricades, whether it's a neighborhood's been closed off. And we found that a lot, and we've put a lot of those tags into OSM where in certain countries, neighborhoods will have a primary entrance into it, and then they'll shut off the other residential roads into it for security purposes. That often wasn't represented in OSM, so if we did any sort of routing pre-trip, we'd have to throw it away anyways. And so basically every day you're looking at an iPad and deciding which way to go based off the neighborhood that you're in. And we have general zones or goals each day that we want to accomplish. And sometimes we get above that or below it. But routing's really difficult. It's the human mind, it's the observation with your eyes, and it's what you can do as efficiently as possible. Yeah.